The auction platform stood weathered and gray in the merciless August sun of Snake River, Idaho, and Delilah Anderson felt the heat burning through her thin cotton dress as fever ravaged her body from the inside. She swayed where she stood, barely conscious of the men's voices shouting numbers, their faces blurred into a mass of whiskers and calculating eyes that assessed her worth like they might judge a lame horse. Her legs threatened to buckle beneath her, and she gripped the wooden post beside her to stay upright, wondering distantly if death might be kinder than whatever came next. The year was 1876, and she had learned in her 22 years that mercy was a rare commodity in this harsh land, especially for a woman with no family, no money, and a body failing her at the worst possible moment. The auctioneer's voice grated against her ears like sandpaper, but the words seemed to come from very far away. Delilah tried to focus on his weathered face, on the crowd gathered in the dusty street, on anything that might anchor her to consciousness, but the world kept tilting sideways. She had been sick for 3 days now, ever since the fever started on the wagon train. The other families had grown nervous, afraid she carried something contagious, and when they reached Snake River, the wagon master had made his decision clear. She could not continue with them. With no money for a doctor or lodging, she had been handed over to settle the debt for her passage west, and now here she stood, being sold to the highest bidder like a piece of furniture. "She does not look like much, but she will recover with proper care," the auctioneer called out, though his tone suggested he did not believe his own words. "Young enough to bear children, old enough to know her place. Who will start the bidding at $20? The crowd murmured, and Delilah heard snickers mixed with outright laughter. $20 was apparently too much to ask for a woman who could barely stand. She closed her eyes, feeling tears burn behind her lids, but she refused to let them fall. She would not give these men the satisfaction of seeing her cry. $10, someone called out, and more laughter followed. "I have $10. Do I hear 15? Silence stretched out, broken only by the distant sound of a piano from one of the saloons and the occasional whinny of horses tied along the street. Delilah opened her eyes and saw several men turning away, losing interest. The auctioneer's face had gone red with frustration or embarrassment. She could not tell which. "Going once for $10, the auctioneer said, his voice flat now, resigned. $50. The voice cut through the murmuring crowd like a knife, deep and steady, and Delilah's head snapped up despite the dizziness that immediately followed the movement. She searched for the source and found him standing at the back of the crowd, a man who looked to be perhaps 26 or 27, tall and broad-shouldered in dusty trail clothes. His hat shadowed his face, but she could see a strong jaw and eyes that looked gray or blue in the harsh sunlight. He walked forward through the parting crowd, his boots kicking up small clouds of dust with each step. $50, he repeated, his voice carrying easily. "And I want the sale finalized now." The auctioneer blinked in surprise, then broke into a wide grin. "Well now, we have $50 from the gentleman. Do I hear 60? The crowd remained silent, most of them staring at the stranger with expressions ranging from curiosity to suspicion. $50 was more than fair for a healthy woman, let alone one who looked half dead already. The man who had bid $10 shook his head and walked away, muttering under his breath. "Going once, going twice, sold to the gentleman for $50. The auctioneer brought his hand down with a sharp clap. "Step up and pay, sir, and she is yours." Delilah watched through the haze of fever as the stranger counted out gold coins into the auctioneer's eager palm. The money changed hands quickly, papers were signed, and then the man was walking toward her, his expression unreadable beneath the brim of his hat. She tried to stand straighter to muster some dignity, but her body betrayed her. Her knees buckled, and she would have fallen if he had not moved quickly, catching her with strong arms that lifted her as easily as if she weighed nothing. "I have got you," he said quietly, and his voice was gentle despite his rough appearance. "You are safe now." Delilah wanted to ask him what he meant, wanted to demand where he was taking her, wanted to fight or flee or do anything other than collapse against his chest like a helpless child. But the fever had stolen her strength along with her choices, and darkness was already creeping in at the edges of her vision. The last thing she registered before unconsciousness claimed her was the steady rhythm of his heartbeat and the surprising gentleness with which he carried her away from the auction platform. When she woke, the first thing Delilah noticed was that she was lying on something soft. The sensation was so unexpected that for a moment she simply lay still, convinced she must be dreaming or delirious. But no, beneath her back was definitely a mattress, a real mattress with clean sheets that smelled faintly of soap and sunshine. She opened her eyes and found herself staring at an unfamiliar ceiling made of rough-hewn timber. Afternoon, light streamed through a window to her left, and she could hear birds singing outside. She tried to sit up and immediately regretted it as the room spun violently. A cool hand pressed against her shoulder, gently but firmly pushing her back down. "Easy now," that same deep voice said. "You have been unconscious for nearly a full day. The fever broke this morning, but you need to rest." Delilah turned her head slowly and found the stranger sitting in a chair beside the bed, a damp cloth in his hand. Up close and without the distortion of fever, she could see him more clearly. He had dark brown hair that curled slightly at the ends where it touched his collar, gray-blue eyes that watched her with concern rather than the calculation she had seen in other men's faces, and a face that was handsome in a rugged, weathered way. He looked tired, she realized, as if he had not slept. "Who are you?" she asked, and was dismayed by how weak her voice sounded. "Vincent Morgan," he said. "And you are Delilah Anderson, according to the papers from the auction." She closed her eyes briefly, shame washing over her at the memory. "You bought me." "I paid for your indenture papers, yes," he said carefully. "But I want you to understand something right from the start. I am not looking for a servant or anything else of that nature. I saw a woman who needed help and I had the means to provide it. That is all." Delilah opened her eyes and studied his face, searching for deception or hidden intentions. She had learned to be wary of men who claimed to want nothing in return. But Vincent Morgan met her gaze steadily, and she saw nothing but sincerity in his expression. "Why?" she asked finally. "Why would you spend $50 on a stranger?" He was quiet for a moment, his gaze drifting to the window. "My sister died 2 years ago," he said eventually, his voice rough with old grief. "Influenza. She was young, only 19, and she died because I did not have enough money at the time for a proper doctor. I have done well since then, built up my ranch, saved my earnings, but that money does not bring her back." He looked at Delilah again. "When I saw you standing on that platform, burning up with fever while men laughed, all I could see was my sister, and I knew I could not walk away." Delilah felt tears prick her eyes, but this time she did not fight them. One slid down her cheek, then another. "I am sorry about your sister," she whispered. Vincent reached out and gently wiped the tears away with the cloth, his touch careful. "Rest now," he said. "We can talk more when you are stronger. I have broth simmering on the stove. When you wake again, you should try to eat something." She wanted to ask more questions, wanted to understand what would happen to her now, but exhaustion was already pulling her back under. Her eyes drifted closed, and this time she let sleep take her without fighting it. The next time Delilah woke, the light outside had faded to the soft purple of dusk. She felt clearer-headed than before, though still weak, and when she carefully pushed herself up to a sitting position, the room stayed blessedly stable. She looked around with more attention, taking in her surroundings properly for the first time. The room was small but well built, with solid log walls and a stone fireplace in one corner. Besides the bed, there was a simple wardrobe, a washstand with a basin and pitcher, and the chair where Vincent had been sitting earlier. Everything was clean and tidy, though worn with use. Through the open doorway, she could see into what appeared to be the main room of the house, where a table and chairs sat near another larger fireplace. Her attention was drawn by movement, and she saw Vincent enter from outside, carrying an armload of firewood. He spotted her sitting up and smiled, transforming his serious face into something warmer. "Good, you are awake. How do you feel?" "Better," she said, and was pleased to hear her voice sounded stronger. "Weak, but better." "That is to be expected. You were very ill." He set the firewood down near the main fireplace and walked over to the doorway. "Are you well enough to try some broth? You need to get food in you." Delilah realized she was hungry, a good sign that her body was healing. "Yes, please." He disappeared for a moment and returned with a bowl and spoon, pulling the chair close so he could help her if needed. But Delilah took the bowl herself, determined to manage at least this much. The broth was simple but good, rich with the flavor of chicken and vegetables, and it warmed her from the inside. She ate slowly, aware of Vincent watching but trying not to let it make her self-conscious. "This is good," she said after a few spoonfuls. "Thank you. My mother's recipe," he said. "She taught me to cook before I left home," said a man who could not feed himself was not much of a man at all. Despite everything, Delilah found herself almost smiling. "She sounds like a wise woman." She was. "She passed 5 years ago along with my father. Winter fever took them both within a week of each other." He leaned back in the chair, his expression distant. "My sister Emma and I were on our own after that. I tried to take care of her, but it was hard. Money was scarce, and I was still learning how to run the ranch my father left us." "Is this his ranch?" Delilah asked, looking around. "No, I built this place myself after Emma died. I could not stay at the old homestead, not with all those memories. I sold it and moved here about 20 miles outside Snake River. The land is good, plenty of water from the creek that runs through the property. I have cattle, some horses, chickens. It is a decent living." Delilah finished the broth and set the bowl aside, trying to process everything. "Mr. Morgan," she began. "Vincent," he interrupted gently. "Please, just call me Vincent." "Vincent," she amended, the name feeling strange on her tongue. "I need to understand what happens now. You said you did not buy me as a servant, but those papers you signed give you legal claim to my labor for at least 7 years. That is how indenture works." His jaw tightened slightly. "I know what the papers say, but I meant what I told you. I do not intend to hold you to that. Once you are well, if you want to leave, I will give you money for passage wherever you want to go and sign papers freeing you from the indenture." "And if I have nowhere to go?" The question came out before she could stop it, revealing more vulnerability than she wanted to show. Vincent was quiet for a long moment, his gray-blue eyes searching her face. "Then you can stay here as long as you need. I will not force anything from you, Delilah. Not labor, not payment, nothing. You have my word on that." She wanted to believe him. The sincerity in his voice, the gentleness he had shown her, all of it pointed to a good man, but life had taught her to be careful with trust. Men do not usually spend $50 and ask for nothing in return. "I am asking for nothing," he said firmly. "What you choose to give is up to you when and if you are ready. Right now, you need to focus on getting well. Everything else can wait." Delilah studied him in the fading light, this stranger who had appeared out of nowhere and changed the course of her fate. She thought about the auction platform, about the men who had laughed at her misery, about the wagon master who had abandoned her without a second thought. And then she thought about Vincent Morgan, who had paid good money simply to help someone in need, who spoke of his dead sister with tears in his voice, who made broth and sat beside her bed to make sure she was all right. "All right," she said softly. "I will stay until I am well. And then we will see what happens next." Vincent nodded, and something that might have been relief crossed his face. "That is fair. Now you should rest more. Healing takes time." She did not argue, partly because she was already feeling tired again and partly because she did not know what else to say. Vincent took the empty bowl and left her alone, closing the door partway to give her privacy. Delilah lay back against the pillows and stared at the darkening ceiling, her mind churning with questions and uncertainties. But underneath all of that was a tiny spark of something she had not felt in a long time, something that might have been hope. The days that followed fell into a gentle rhythm. Vincent proved to be a patient caretaker, bringing her meals 3 times a day and checking on her regularly without being intrusive. He had clearly done this before, she realized, had nursed his sister through illnesses, had learned what a sick person needed. He kept the room at a comfortable temperature, brought fresh water for washing, changed the sheets when she was strong enough to sit in the chair for a few minutes. By the 3rd day, Delilah was able to get out of bed and walk a bit, though she tired quickly. Vincent helped her to the main room where she could sit by the window and look out at the ranch. It was beautiful in a stark way, with rolling grasslands stretching toward distant mountains, the creek glinting silver in the sunlight. She could see cattle grazing in the distance and horses in a corral near the barn. "You have built something good here," she said as Vincent brought her a cup of tea. He looked out the window, following her gaze. "It is coming along. I have about 50 head of cattle now, and I am hoping to drive them to market in Boise next month. The money from that should let me buy more breeding stock before winter." "You run this place alone?" she asked, impressed despite herself. "Mostly. I hire help during roundup and for the drive, but day to day I handle it myself. It is hard work, but I like it. Out here, a man succeeds or fails based on his own efforts. That feels honest to me." Delilah sipped her tea, thinking about what he said. "Where are you from originally?" "Missouri. My parents brought Emma and me west when I was 15, looking for better land. They found it too, good farmland in eastern Oregon, but they were not young anymore and the work was hard. When the fever took them, it felt like everything they had built just crumbled." He paused, his expression sad. "I tried to hold onto the farm for Emma's sake, but I was not cut out for farming. Ranching suits me better." "And what about you?" he asked, turning the question back to her. "How did you end up on that auction platform?" Delilah had known the question would come eventually, but it still made her chest tighten. She stared down into her tea, watching the steam rise. "My parents died when I was 17. Cholera. They had a small shop in Philadelphia, but there were debts I did not know about. Everything was sold to settle them, and I was left with nothing. I worked for a while as a seamstress, but it was barely enough to live on." She took a breath, forcing herself to continue. "Last year, I saw an advertisement for a traveling party heading west. They needed unmarried women willing to relocate to the territories, said there were opportunities for teachers and seamstresses in the new towns. It cost almost everything I had saved to buy passage, but I thought it was worth it. A chance to start over, you know." Vincent nodded, his eyes sympathetic. "What went wrong?" "I got sick 3 days outside Snake River. The fever came on fast and people were afraid it might be something contagious. They started avoiding me, would not let me near their children." When we reached town, the wagon master said I could not continue with them. I had no money left for lodging or a doctor, so he sold my indenture papers to cover my passage. I tried to argue, but legally he was within his rights. I owed for the space on the wagon, and I could not pay. That is a cruel interpretation of the law, Vincent said, anger sharpening his voice. It is the law nonetheless, Delilah said with a bitter smile. I learned that day that the world does not care much for a woman alone with no money. I was just another problem to be solved. Well, you are not a problem here, Vincent said firmly. You are a person who had bad luck and deserved better than she got, and for what it is worth, I am glad I was there that day. Delilah looked at him, really looked at him, and felt something shift in her chest. He meant it, she could see that clearly. This man, this stranger who had become her unexpected savior, genuinely cared what happened to her. It was almost overwhelming. I am glad you were there too, she said quietly, though I still cannot quite believe you are real. Men like you do not exist in my experience. Vincent's smile was crooked, almost self-deprecating. I am just a man, Delilah. I make mistakes like anyone else, but I try to do what I think is right, and helping you was the right thing to do. They sat together in comfortable silence after that, watching the afternoon shadows lengthen across the land. Delilah felt stronger with each passing hour, felt life returning to her body and clarity to her mind. And with that returning strength came a growing awareness of the man beside her, of the kindness in his eyes and the gentleness in his hands, of the way her heart beat a little faster when he smiled. By the end of the first week, Delilah was well enough to move around the house freely, though Vincent still insisted she take things slowly. She found herself wanting to help, to contribute something to justify his care, and one morning she woke early and started making breakfast before he came in from the barn. Vincent stopped in the doorway when he saw her at the stove, surprise clear on his face. You should not be up doing this yet. I am feeling much better, she said, turning the bacon in the pan, and I wanted to do something useful. You have done so much for me. Delilah, I told you that you do not owe me anything. I know what you told me, she said, meeting his eyes, but this is not about owing. This is about wanting to help. Please let me do this. He studied her for a long moment, then nodded slowly. All right, but if you start feeling tired or unwell, you stop immediately. Agreed, agreed. They ate breakfast together at the table, and Delilah was pleased to see Vincent seemed to enjoy the meal. It felt good to do something productive, to be more than just a patient being cared for. After they ate, she insisted on cleaning up while he went out to tend to the animals. The days began to take on a new pattern after that. Delilah would wake and prepare breakfast, then spend the morning doing light household tasks while Vincent worked outside. He would come in for lunch, and they would eat together and talk. The conversations came easily now, ranging from childhood memories to dreams for the future, from silly stories that made them laugh to serious discussions about life in the territories. Delilah found herself looking forward to these talks, to the sound of Vincent's voice, and the way his eyes crinkled when he smiled. She noticed little things about him, the way he always removed his hat when he entered the house, how he was gentle with the animals, the strength in his hands when he chopped wood. She tried not to think too much about these observations, tried not to acknowledge what they might mean. One afternoon, nearly 2 weeks after the auction, Vincent came in looking troubled. Delilah was kneading bread dough at the table and looked up with concern. What is wrong? He removed his hat and ran a hand through his hair, a gesture she had come to recognize as a sign of worry. I need to make a trip into Snake River tomorrow. One of my horses threw a shoe and I need to see the blacksmith. I will also need to pick up some supplies. That does not sound like a problem, Delilah said, confused. I do not like the idea of leaving you alone all day, he admitted. You are still recovering, and if something happened. Vincent, I am fine now, she assured him. The fever has been gone for days. I can manage here for one day. He looked unconvinced. Are you certain? I am certain. Besides, I could use the time to give this house a proper cleaning. When was the last time you washed the windows? That earned her a sheepish smile. I cannot remember. Then it is definitely time. Go to town, do what you need to do. I will be here when you get back. Vincent agreed, though reluctantly, and the next morning he left just after dawn. Delilah watched him ride away, then turned her attention to the house. True to her word, she spent the day cleaning, washing windows and floors, beating dust from the rugs, organizing the kitchen. The work felt good, made her feel useful and strong. She was hanging laundry to dry when she heard the sound of an approaching horse. Thinking Vincent had returned early, she smiled and turned toward the sound. But the rider who appeared around the corner of the house was not Vincent. The man was older, perhaps in his 50s, with a grizzled beard and cold eyes that made Delilah's skin crawl. He sat his horse like someone accustomed to intimidating others, and when he smiled at her, it did not reach his eyes. Well, now, you must be the woman Morgan bought at the auction, he said, his voice rough. Word in town is he paid good money for you. Delilah straightened, fighting the urge to step back. Mr. Morgan is not here right now. You will have to come back another time. Oh, I am not here to see Morgan, the man said, dismounting slowly. I am here to see you. Name is Frank Delaney. I own the spread east of here. What do you want, Mr. Delaney? Delilah asked, keeping her voice steady despite her growing unease. Just curious about Morgan's new acquisition, he said, walking closer. Seems odd. A man living alone buying a woman at auction and then not working her hard or using her how most men would. Makes a person wonder what kind of arrangement you two have. That is none of your concern, Delilah said sharply. Delaney laughed, a harsh sound. Everything that happens on the properties around mine is my concern, girl. I look out for my interests. He was close now, too close, and Delilah could smell whiskey on his breath. Now, if Morgan is not treating you right, not appreciating what he bought, maybe you would be interested in a different arrangement. I could use a woman around my place. I am not interested, Delilah said, taking a step back. You need to leave, or what? Delaney moved quickly for a man his size, grabbing her wrist. You think Morgan cares what happens to you? He bought you, same as he would buy a horse. You are property, girl, and property can be sold or traded. Delilah tried to pull away, but his grip was iron strong. Fear spiked through her, sharp and cold. Let go of me. Not until we come to an understanding, Delaney said, pulling her closer. The sound of a hammer being cocked froze them both. Delilah turned her head and saw Vincent standing at the corner of the house, a rifle leveled at Delaney. His face was hard as stone, his eyes cold with fury. Take your hand off her right now, Vincent said, his voice deadly quiet, or I will put a bullet through your skull and not lose a moment's sleep over it. Delaney released Delilah's wrist immediately, raising his hands. Now, Morgan, there is no call for that. I was just talking to the lady. You were threatening and assaulting someone under my protection, Vincent said, walking closer but keeping the rifle trained on Delaney. Get on your horse and get off my property. If I ever see you near her again, if I hear you have been asking about her in town, if you so much as say her name, I will kill you. Do you understand me? You are making a big mistake, Morgan, Delaney said, backing toward his horse. I have friends in this territory, and I have a rifle and a willingness to use it to protect what is mine. Now ride. Delaney mounted quickly and spurred his horse into a gallop, disappearing down the road in a cloud of dust. Vincent lowered the rifle only when he was completely out of sight, then turned to Delilah. The fury drained from his face, replaced by concern. "Are you all right? Did he hurt you?" Delilah was shaking, she realized, trembling from the rush of fear and adrenaline. "I am fine. He grabbed my wrist, but I am fine." Vincent set the rifle aside and gently took her hand, examining the red marks on her wrist where Delaney had gripped her. His jaw tightened. "I should have put a bullet in him." "Vincent, it is all right. You stopped him before anything worse happened." "I never should have left you alone," he said, his voice rough with self-recrimination. "I knew Delaney was a problem, knew he had been asking questions about you in town. That is why I came back early, because something did not feel right, and I was almost too late." "But you were not too late," Delilah said, placing her free hand on his arm. "You came back and you protected me. That is what matters." Vincent looked at her, and the intensity in his eyes made her breath catch. "Delilah, I need you to understand something. When I told Delaney you were under my protection, I meant it. While you are here, you are safe. I will not let anyone hurt you. Ever." The way he said it, the fierceness in his voice, made something warm bloom in Delilah's chest. She had spent so long being afraid, being vulnerable, being at the mercy of others' whims. But standing here with Vincent, seeing the determination in his face, she felt safer than she had in years. "I believe you," she said softly. "And thank you." They stood there for a long moment, hands still touching, something unspoken passing between them. Then Vincent cleared his throat and stepped back, his expression turning rueful. "I should check the perimeter, make sure Delaney really left. Will you be all right if I do that?" "Yes. But Vincent—" "Do not be long," he smiled, and it was like the sun coming out from behind clouds. "I will not be. I promise." After that day, something changed between them. It was subtle at first, small things that might have meant nothing individually but together painted a clear picture. Vincent found more reasons to be near the house during the day, taking breaks from his work to check on Delilah or share a cup of coffee. Delilah caught herself watching him through the window as he worked, admiring the strength in his movements and the care he showed for his animals. Their conversations grew deeper, more personal. One evening, as they sat on the porch watching the sunset, Vincent told her about his dreams for the ranch, about wanting to build something that would last, something he could pass down to children someday. Delilah shared her own dreams, ones she had thought long dead, about having a home and family, about belonging somewhere. "Do you ever think about leaving?" Vincent asked suddenly. "Going back east or trying another city?" Delilah considered the question honestly. "I thought I would want to," she admitted. "When you first offered to send me wherever I wanted to go, I thought I would jump at the chance. But now—" She trailed off, unsure how to finish. "Now," Vincent prompted gently. "Now I am not so sure," she said, looking at him. "I like it here. The land, the quiet, the feeling that what you do matters, and I like—" She stopped, suddenly shy. "What do you like?" His voice was soft, careful. "I like the company," she finished, feeling her cheeks warm. Vincent's smile was slow and genuine. "I like the company too. More than I expected to, if I am being honest. This house felt like a lonely place before you came. Now it feels like a home." Delilah's heart was beating fast, and she knew they were approaching something important, some line that once crossed could not be uncrossed. "Vincent, what are we doing here?" He turned to face her fully, his expression serious. "I do not know exactly, but I know that having you here has made me happier than I have been in a long time. I know that I think about you when I am working, wonder what you are doing, look forward to seeing you at lunch. I know that when Delaney grabbed you, I wanted to kill him, and that scared me because I have never felt that kind of rage before." "I think about you too," Delilah confessed. "All the time, and it confuses me because we barely know each other, and the circumstances that brought me here were not exactly romantic. But when I am with you, I feel safe and happy and like maybe I could have the life I always wanted." "What if we gave this a chance?" Vincent asked. "Not rushing anything, just letting whatever this is between us develop naturally. You stay here, not as an indentured servant but as an equal, and we see where things go." Delilah wanted to say yes immediately, but years of caution held her back. "And if it does not work out? If we discover we are not suited after all? Then we remain friends, and I help you find whatever you need to build a different life," Vincent said without hesitation. "I meant what I said before, Delilah. I am not trying to trap you or force anything. But I would be lying if I said I did not hope this works out, because I am already half in love with you." The words hung in the air between them, honest and vulnerable. Delilah felt tears prick her eyes, but they were good tears this time, tears of joy and hope and relief. "I am already half in love with you too," she whispered. "Maybe more than half." Vincent reached out and took her hand, threading his fingers through hers. "Then let us see where this goes, together." "Together," she agreed. And when he leaned in to kiss her, soft and gentle and perfect, she felt like she was finally, truly home. The weeks that followed were some of the happiest of Delilah's life. She and Vincent fell into an easy partnership, working together to maintain the ranch and building a relationship that grew stronger each day. He taught her to ride, patient and encouraging as she learned to handle the horses. She improved her cooking, experimenting with recipes and laughing with him when things did not turn out quite right. They talked about everything and nothing, sharing stories from their pasts and dreams for their future. Vincent spoke of his hope to expand the ranch, maybe buy the property to the south and run more cattle. Delilah talked about wanting to learn more about ranching, about being a true partner in the work rather than just a housekeeper. "You already are a partner," Vincent told her one morning as they worked together to mend a section of fence. "I could not do this without you. You have made everything better." Physical affection came gradually, naturally. Stolen kisses in the kitchen, held hands while walking by the creek, gentle embraces on the porch as they watched the stars. Vincent was always careful, always respectful, never pushing for more than Delilah was ready to give. But the desire was there, simmering beneath the surface, growing stronger as their love deepened. One evening in late September, nearly 2 months after the auction, Vincent took Delilah's hand as they sat by the fire and knelt before her. Her heart leapt into her throat. "I know we have not been together long," he said, his voice steady despite the nervousness in his eyes. "And I know the way we met was far from traditional. But Delilah, these past weeks have been the best of my life. You have brought joy and light and love into this house and into my heart. I cannot imagine my future without you in it." He reached into his pocket and pulled out a simple gold ring. "This was my grandmother's. My mother gave it to me before she died, told me to save it for the woman I would marry. I want that woman to be you. Will you marry me?" Delilah felt tears streaming down her face, but she was smiling so wide it almost hurt. "Yes," she said, her voice breaking with emotion. "Yes, Vincent, I will marry you. I love you so much." He slipped the ring onto her finger and it fit perfectly, as if it had been made for her. Then he pulled her into his arms and kissed her deeply. And she knew without a doubt that this was right, that this man was her future and her home. They were married 2 weeks later in a small ceremony in Snake River, with a few of Vincent's friends from town serving as witnesses. Delilah wore a simple blue dress she had sewn herself, and Vincent wore his best suit, looking handsome enough to take her breath away. The preacher spoke about love and partnership and the bonds of matrimony, and when Vincent slipped a second ring onto her finger to join the first, Delilah thought her heart might burst with happiness. The ride back to the ranch, as man and wife, felt different somehow, charged with new meaning. This was their home now, truly and legally. They were building a life together, and the future stretched out before them full of possibility. That night, in the bedroom they would now share, Vincent was gentle and patient, taking his time to show Delilah how much he loved her. She had been nervous, unsure what to expect, but he made her feel cherished and safe. Their joining was tender and sweet, a physical expression of the love that had been growing between them since the day he had first caught her when she fell. Afterward, lying in his arms in the darkness, Delilah marveled at how much her life had changed. Just 2 months ago, she had been standing on an auction platform, sick and alone and certain her life was over. Now she was married to a good man who loved her, living on a beautiful ranch with a future full of hope. "What are you thinking about?" Vincent asked, his voice a low rumble in his chest. "How lucky I am," she said honestly. "How grateful I am that you were in Snake River that day." "I am the lucky one," he said, kissing the top of her head. "You have made me whole again, Delilah, given me a reason to build something more than just a successful ranch. Now I am building a family, a legacy, and I could not ask for a better partner to do that with." "I love you," she whispered. "I love you too. Always." The seasons changed, and Delilah and Vincent settled into married life with ease. The fall cattle drive was successful, bringing in good money that they used to buy more breeding stock as Vincent had planned. Winter came cold and harsh, but the house was warm and well stocked, and they spent the long evenings by the fire, talking and reading and simply enjoying each other's company. Delilah discovered she had a natural aptitude for ranching, learning quickly how to care for the animals and manage the books. Vincent encouraged her involvement, valuing her opinions and making major decisions together. They were true partners in every sense, and the ranch thrived under their joint efforts. In February, Delilah began to suspect she might be pregnant. She waited a few weeks to be certain, then told Vincent one morning over breakfast. His reaction was everything she could have hoped for. He picked her up and spun her around, laughing with pure joy, then set her down carefully as if she might break. "A baby," he kept saying, wonder in his voice. "We are going to have a baby." "Are you happy?" Delilah asked, though his reaction made the answer clear. "Happy does not begin to cover it," he said, cupping her face in his hands. "You have given me everything I ever wanted, Delilah. A home, a family, a future. I love you more than words can express." The pregnancy was not always easy. Delilah suffered from morning sickness in the early months and grew uncomfortable as summer approached, and she grew larger. But Vincent was attentive and caring, taking on more of the household tasks and fussing over her in a way that was both endearing and occasionally frustrating. "I am pregnant, not fragile," she told him one afternoon when he insisted she rest instead of helping with the laundry. "I know that," he said, "but you are carrying our child and I want to make sure you are both safe and healthy. Let me take care of you, please." She could not argue with the earnestness in his eyes, so she rested, though she still found ways to contribute to the running of the household. She sewed baby clothes, prepared the small room next to theirs as a nursery, and planned for the future with eager anticipation. Their son was born in early September, almost exactly 1 year after their wedding. The labor was long and difficult, attended by a midwife from town who had made the journey out to the ranch. Vincent stayed close throughout, holding Delilah's hand and offering encouragement even when she cursed him for putting her in this position in the first place. But when the baby finally arrived, squalling and red-faced and perfect, all the pain was forgotten. Vincent held his son with shaking hands, tears streaming down his face while Delilah watched with her own eyes swimming. "He is beautiful," Vincent said, his voice choked with emotion. "You are amazing. Thank you for this gift." They named him Thomas, after Vincent's father, with the middle name James after Delilah's. Little Thomas had his father's dark hair and what would probably be his mother's blue eyes, and from the first moment, he had both his parents completely wrapped around his tiny fingers. The months that followed were exhausting but wonderful. Delilah adjusted to motherhood with the same determination she brought to everything else, learning to balance caring for Thomas with helping run the ranch. Vincent was a devoted father, spending every free moment with his son, talking to him even though the baby could not understand, holding him while he slept. "You are a natural," Delilah told him one evening as she watched him rock Thomas to sleep. "I had a good teacher," Vincent said, smiling at her. "My father was patient and kind, always made time for Emma and me no matter how busy he was. I want to be that kind of father to Thomas and to any other children we might have." "Other children?" Delilah asked with a raised eyebrow. "Let me recover from this one first." Vincent laughed. "Fair enough, but I do hope Thomas will have siblings someday. I loved having Emma even though I lost her too soon. I want our children to have that bond." "Someday," Delilah agreed, "when we are ready." As Thomas grew from an infant to a curious toddler, the ranch continued to prosper. They hired 2 permanent ranch hands to help with the work, giving Vincent more time to spend with his family. Delilah took over managing the household finances and proved to have a shrewd head for business, finding ways to maximize their profits and invest wisely. In the spring of 1879, when Thomas was nearly 2 years old, Delilah discovered she was pregnant again. This time the pregnancy was easier, and in December she gave birth to a daughter they named Sarah, after Vincent's mother. Sarah had her mother's auburn hair and her father's gray-blue eyes, and she was as sweet-tempered as her brother was energetic. "Our family is complete," Vincent said, holding Sarah while Thomas dozed against his mother's side. "2 healthy children, a successful ranch, and the woman I love. I could not ask for anything more." "It is pretty perfect," Delilah agreed, looking around at her family. She thought about the scared, sick woman who had stood on that auction platform almost 4 years ago and marveled at how far she had come. "I never imagined I could be this happy." "Neither did I," Vincent said, "but you have taught me that good things can come from the darkest moments." "That day in Snake River, when I saw you and knew I had to help, that was the best decision I ever made." "We saved each other," Delilah said softly. "I needed rescuing, but you needed someone to make you whole again after losing your sister. We were both broken in our own ways, and we healed each other." The years continued to pass, marked by the changing seasons and the growth of their children. Thomas grew into a serious, thoughtful boy who loved working alongside his father, learning everything he could about ranching. Sarah was bright and cheerful, with a gift for finding joy in simple things. In 1882, another daughter arrived, named Emma after Vincent's beloved sister. Little Emma was as spirited as her namesake had apparently been, keeping her parents on their toes from the start. The ranch expanded as they had hoped, with the purchase of adjacent land and a growing herd of cattle that became known for their quality throughout the territory. Delilah's business acumen proved invaluable as they navigated the sometimes complicated politics and economics of ranching in Idaho. Together, she and Vincent built something that was truly theirs, a legacy they would pass down to their children. Frank Delaney, the man who had threatened Delilah years before, eventually sold his ranch and left the territory, much to everyone's relief. Vincent's reputation as a fair but firm man who protected what was his made others think twice about causing trouble. And Delilah's transformation from a frightened, sick woman being sold at auction to a confident, capable rancher's wife became something of a local legend. One evening in the summer of 1884, as they sat on the porch watching their children play in the yard, Delilah leaned against Vincent's shoulder with a contented sigh. "You ever think about that day?" she asked. "The auction?" "Sometimes," Vincent admitted. "Usually when I want to remind myself how blessed I am." "Why do you ask?" "I was thinking about it today, about how terrified I was, how certain I was that my life was over. And now look at us. 3 beautiful children, a home we built together, a future I could not have imagined even in my wildest dreams." Vincent pulled her closer, pressing a kiss to her temple. "You would have found your way somehow, even without me. You are too strong and determined to have stayed down for long." "Maybe," Delilah said, "but I am glad I did not have to find out. I am glad you were there, that you saw me when so many others just looked away. You gave me everything, Vincent. A home, a family, love. You gave me my life back. And you gave me mine," he said, his voice rough with emotion. "After Emma died, I was just going through the motions, building something without really knowing why. You gave me purpose again, reminded me what I was working toward. This family, this life we have built, it is everything I needed without knowing I needed it." Thomas came running up to the porch then, Sarah and little Emma trailing behind him, all 3 of them dusty and laughing from their games. "Papa, can we ride down to the creek before bed?" Thomas asked, his eyes bright with hope. Vincent looked at Delilah, who nodded with a smile. "All right, but just to the creek and back. It will be dark soon." The children cheered and ran toward the barn, already arguing good-naturedly about who would ride which horse. Vincent and Delilah followed more slowly, hand in hand, watching their children with the pride and love that never diminished no matter how many times they saw them. At the barn, Vincent helped Thomas saddle his pony while Delilah lifted Sarah onto her gentle mare. Little Emma, still too young to ride alone, would ride with her father. Once everyone was mounted, they set off toward the creek, the children chattering excitedly about a frog Thomas had seen earlier and wanted to show his sisters. Delilah watched them go with Vincent, their silhouettes dark against the golden light of sunset, and felt a wave of gratitude so strong it almost overwhelmed her. This life, this family, this love, it was everything she had ever wanted and more. The scared young woman who had been sold at auction 8 years ago felt like a different person, someone from a different life. But that woman had been strong too, Delilah realized. Strong enough to survive when survival seemed impossible, strong enough to accept help when it was offered, strong enough to open her heart to love even when she had every reason to be afraid. That woman had been the seed from which this life had grown, and Delilah honored her by living fully in the happiness she had found. The sound of children's laughter drifted back from the creek, mingling with Vincent's deeper voice as he answered some question or told some story. Delilah smiled and walked back to the house, thinking about the dinner she needed to prepare and the million small tasks that made up a life. But first, she paused at the window, looking out at the land that was now hers, really and truly hers in a way she had never thought possible. The ranch spread out before her, golden in the fading light, solid and real and permanent. This was home. This was family. This was love, and it had all started with a simple act of kindness from a cowboy who had seen a woman in need and decided to help. Vincent had bought her freedom and nursed her back to health with gentle hands and a kind heart, never asking for anything in return. He had given her the space to heal and the time to fall in love, and in doing so had built something beautiful from a situation that should have been tragic. Years later, when Thomas was a young man preparing to take over the ranch, he asked his mother about how she and his father had met. Delilah told him the truth, not hiding the difficult parts but emphasizing the love and kindness that had transformed her fate. "Your father saw me at my lowest moment," she said, "sick and afraid and being sold like property. But he did not see something to be used or exploited. He saw a person who deserved help and dignity and kindness. He saved my life, Thomas, not just by buying me from that auction, but by treating me like a human being worthy of respect and care." "And then you fell in love," Thomas said with a smile, having heard parts of the story before. "Then we fell in love," Delilah agreed, "but not immediately. Love takes time, requires trust and understanding and shared experiences. Your father gave me all of that. He was patient and gentle and never pushed me to be anything other than who I was. And I loved him for that, and for 1,000 other reasons." "I hope I can find that kind of love someday," Thomas said thoughtfully. "You will," Delilah assured him. "And when you do, remember what your father taught you. Treat the woman you love with respect and kindness. Be her partner, not her master. Value her opinions and her strength. That is how you build something that lasts." Thomas took those lessons to heart, as did his sisters when they eventually married. The values Vincent and Delilah had built their marriage on became the foundation for the next generation, a legacy more valuable than land or cattle. In the autumn of 1895, nearly 20 years after that fateful day at the auction, Delilah and Vincent celebrated their anniversary by taking a rare trip to Snake River together. The town had grown considerably, with new buildings and businesses sprouting up along the main street. But some things remained the same, including the old platform where auctions were sometimes still held. Delilah stood looking at it, Vincent's arm around her shoulders, and felt nothing but gratitude. That platform, that terrible day, had been the beginning of her real life. Without it, she would never have met Vincent, never have built the ranch, never have had her children. Pain and hardship had led to joy and love, and she would not change a single moment of it. "What are you thinking?" Vincent asked, his voice warm with affection even after all these years. "That I would do it all again," Delilah said. "Every moment of fear and pain and uncertainty, if it meant ending up here with you." Vincent turned her to face him, his gray-blue eyes still as kind and gentle as they had been the first time she had truly seen them. "I love you, Delilah Morgan. More today than yesterday, more tomorrow than today." "I love you too," she said, and kissed him there in the street, not caring who might see. They were no longer the scared woman and the lonely cowboy, but a couple who had built something remarkable together, whose love had only grown stronger with time. They returned to the ranch as the sun was setting, painting the sky in shades of gold and pink and purple. The house stood solid and welcoming, smoke rising from the chimney where their daughter Emma was preparing dinner. Thomas was in the barn seeing to the evening chores, and Sarah was visiting with her husband and baby son at their own small ranch a few miles away. Life was good. Life was full. And Delilah knew, as she walked hand in hand with her husband toward the home they had built together, that she had been blessed beyond measure. From the ashes of despair had grown a love story more beautiful than she could have imagined, a life more fulfilling than she had dared to dream. The cowboy who had bought her at auction while she was sick and nursed her back to health with gentle hands had given her everything, but she had given him just as much in return. They had saved each other, healed each other, and loved each other through all the years that followed. And as they crossed the threshold of their home together, Delilah thought once more of that desperate young woman on the auction platform. She sent a silent message back through the years, a promise and a reassurance. "Hold on. Help is coming. Love is waiting. Your story is not over. It is only just beginning." The fire crackled in the hearth as the family gathered for dinner that evening. 3 generations now, with Sarah's baby boy being passed around and admired. Delilah looked around the table at the faces she loved, at the life they had all built together, and knew that this was what true wealth looked like. Not land or money or possessions, but love and family and belonging. Vincent caught her eye across the table and smiled, that same gentle smile that had first made her believe she might be safe, that had grown to mean home and love and forever. She smiled back, her heart full to bursting, and raised her glass in a silent toast to the journey that had brought them here, to the love that had sustained them, to the life they had created together from the most unlikely of beginnings. Outside, the Idaho night settled over the ranch, stars emerging one by one in the darkening sky. The cattle lowed softly in their pastures, the horses whickered in the barn, and the creek sang its endless song as it wound through the property. Inside, warmth and laughter and love filled every corner of the house Vincent had built and Delilah had transformed into a home. It was everything they had worked for, everything they had dreamed of, everything they deserved. And it had all started with a simple choice, made by a good man who had seen suffering and refused to look away. Vincent Morgan had bought Delilah Anderson at an auction in Snake River, Idaho, on a hot August day in 1876. But what he had really done was save her, in every way a person could be saved. And in return, she had saved him too, from loneliness, from purposeless striving, from a half-lived life. Together, they had created something whole and beautiful and lasting, a love story for the ages, a testament to the power of kindness and the healing nature of gentle, genuine care. As the evening wore on, and the family eventually dispersed to their various tasks and homes, Delilah and Vincent found themselves alone again on the porch, watching the stars and enjoying the peace that came from a day well lived. "Thank you," Delilah said softly into the quiet night. "For what?" Vincent asked, though his smile suggested he knew. "For everything. For seeing me when I needed to be seen. For caring when others turned away. For loving me when I could not imagine being loved. For building this life with me." Vincent pulled her close and she rested her head on his shoulder, breathing in the familiar scent of him. Home and safety and love all wrapped together. "Thank you for letting me," he said. "For trusting me enough to stay, for loving me back, for making me a father and a true husband. For turning a house into a home and a ranch into a legacy. You are my greatest blessing, Delilah. Always have been, always will be." They sat together in comfortable silence, two people who had found each other against all odds and built something remarkable from that chance meeting. The auction platform was far behind them now, a distant memory from another life. What mattered was the present, this moment, this love that had grown and deepened with every passing year. The future stretched out before them still, full of promise and possibility. Grandchildren to spoil, the ranch to continue building, years of life and love yet to be lived. They would face it all together, as they had faced everything since that day in Snake River, as partners and lovers and best friends. And when the time finally came, many years later, for them to leave this world behind, they would do that together too. They would go peacefully, surrounded by the family they had created and the love they had nurtured, knowing they had lived fully and loved deeply and built something that would outlast them both. But that was still far in the future. For now, they had this moment, this evening, this life they had created. They had each other, and that was more than enough. It was everything. The stars wheeled overhead in their eternal dance, and the Idaho night wrapped around the ranch like a blanket. Inside the house, the fire burned low in the hearth, its warmth a reminder that home was not a place but a feeling, not a building but the people who filled it with love. Delilah and Vincent Morgan had found that home in each other, had built it together from nothing, had filled it with joy and laughter and children and dreams. They had taken a moment of desperation, and transformed it into a lifetime of love. They had proven that kindness could change a life, that gentleness could heal even the deepest wounds, that love could bloom in the most unexpected places. It was a story worth telling, a love worth celebrating, a life worth living. And as they finally rose from the porch and walked inside together, hand in hand as they had been for nearly 20 years, they knew that they had found what everyone searches for: a love that lasts, a home that shelters, a partnership that strengthens, and a happiness that endures. The door closed behind them, and the ranch settled into night, solid and real and permanent. Tomorrow would bring new challenges and new joys, as tomorrow always did. But they would face it together, as they had faced every day since Vincent Morgan bought Delilah Anderson at an auction while she was sick and nursed her back to health with gentle hands and a kind heart. It was not the beginning anyone would have chosen. But it was the beginning they had been given, and they had made something beautiful from it. They had written their own story, one of love and healing and second chances, and it was a story that would echo through generations. A reminder that sometimes the darkest moments lead to the brightest futures, and that love, real and true and lasting, is always worth fighting for.